Good evening. I'm Betsy Stites. I'm president of the Woodbury Cottage Grove League of Women Voters, and I'm so glad that you've joined us tonight. We think this is really going to be an incredibly valuable conversation with our three panelists. We know that there's a school board election coming up November 2nd, and we have wonderful candidate forums later in the month on September 20th and 21st. We know there's a lot of questions about, well, what the heck does the school board do anyway? And so we thought it would be wonderful to have this panel discussion we're calling School Board 101. I just want to mention a couple of things about the League of Women Voters. We envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. Our mission is to empower voters. That's why we're here tonight, to defend democracy. And I always want to really identify that the League is a nonpartisan organization. We neither support nor oppose candidates or political parties at any level of government, but we're always working on vital issues of concern to members and the public. One of the important things about tonight, and it underscores the fact that we are nonpartisan and don't endorse or oppose any candidates. So all of the panelists that you're seeing tonight are invited who are not running for election this fall. And we are thrilled that they've been willing to be with us tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Jody Rataka, who will introduce them and get us started with our discussion. Jody?
Well, thank you so much, Betsy. I really appreciate it. And good evening, everyone, and welcome. And before we begin, I want you to know that the Q&A is open for questions, and you can submit them during the program, and we will reserve time at the end of the program so you can get in, and so we can get in as many of your questions as possible. And that, as she mentioned, that this program is being recorded and available on the League YouTube channel. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our three panelists. They are, as Betsy mentioned, they are current and past members of South Washington County School District 833 and currently not running in this election. Tracy Brunnette is the current chair of the school board, and she moved to Cottage Grove in 1993 and is proud to have served on the school board for 22 years. And she has two sons who graduated from Park High School. Thank you, Tracy. And then Simi Patnaik currently serves on the school board, and her term expires in 2023. She has lived in the district for nearly 20 years. She and her husband have two children in District 833 schools, a daughter at Woodbury High School and a son at Woodbury Middle School. And we are also pleased to have with us Carlo Montgomery. She has lived in Woodbury for over 45 plus years, and she has served on three consecutive three-year terms on the school board starting in 1985 and ending in 1993, and she continues to be active in our community. So thank you, panelists, for taking time and being generous of your time to be with us this evening. So thank you so much. Well, we'll begin with a couple of questions about that might make a successful board member. Telling us a little bit about why you got involved and why you decided to run for school board, and what are lessons that you learned serving as a school board member. So we'll begin with Tracy.
All right. So I guess, how I got involved in public education in general was when I had my first child and really didn't have any other families near me. So we lived in St. Paul. And then I heard about early childhood family education, and I joined when he was 9 months old. And from there, it was kind of like, history, right? Joining the parent advisory group in St. Paul, the citywide parent advisory group in St. Paul, moved to Cottage Grove, and first day of school asked, how can I be involved? So PTA president, etc. And then actually my principal had suggested maybe you should run for the board. And I thought, I could do that. So I tried in 97 and lost to a coin toss in 98. And then in 1999, I was elected and took the position as school board member in 2000. And the reason I wanted to be a part of the school board is basically the passion for public education. When I ran, if I remember right, like 88% of the students in Minnesota got their education from public schools. And to me, that's like, oh my gosh, you know, you need to make sure that the public schools offer the best education we can. So that was my passion, was to make sure kids got the education that they needed to be successful. And obviously, I know I said it in my campaigns, but they are truly the future. So we need to make sure we do it right. So that's why I ran. Lessons learned. Wow. Boundaries are tough. That's all I gotta say. So yeah, it's just difficult. I think the one thing I learned is, you know, as a parent, of course, you want to advocate for your child. That's your job, right? But as a school board member, you need to take a broader view. So clearly at the school level, I was supporting the school, supporting my child's class, et cetera, et cetera. But once I got elected to the board, you have to consider for, you know, now like nearly 19,000 children who attend our schools. So it's just a different perspective, right? It's yeah, just a different perspective. So you just need to do what's best for all. So.
Thanks, Tracy. And Carlo, why don't you take it next?
Oh, you're on mute, Carlo.
I was going to say I can make this really short, but after listening to Tracy, I have to say that part of it too is that as being a PTA in the PTA as a volunteer coordinator, being a PTA person, also here when we got here, the kids just went to the zoo. That was all, you know, the new zoo. One little girl was in the second grade and she'd been to the new zoo 5 times. It was like, oh no, I'm from Cleveland and we went to the theater, we went to the orchestra. So these kids have got to go to the theater, they got to go to the orchestra. And then it was PTA and building advisory. And then community ed. I absolutely love community ed. I was chair about the time they closed the junior high school on my son. And he was in the 7th grade and they closed this junior high 3 days before the semester was over. And I was just fit to be tied. And so I decided I was going to run to protest. Well, the problem with that is that sometimes when you run to protest, you know, you're just doing your little thing and you're hoping you'll get back on community ed. People just get in behind you and the next thing you know, you're on the school board and it's like, oh my God, I'm on the school board. And that's how I got there. Lessons learned. I had a friend, the first time I ever went to a school board meeting, I went to ask for recess aides for Royal Oaks Elementary. And I didn't get them. And the next day, this woman calls me and she says, my name is Bernice Law, and you stand out in a crowd and that you're not going to get those recess aides like that. And it was like, who are you? And so I said, well, I want you to know I stand out in any crowd. And what do I have to do to get those recess aides? And she said, you have to work for the good of all the children in the school district. And so that became my guiding force, is that I work for the good of all the children in the school district.
Thanks, Carlo. And Simi.
Sure. Well, you know, this is going to sound pretty similar to both Tracy and Carlo. I ran for school board because I am a product of public schools and I'm really passionate about what public schools can do for our kids and our communities and our society as a whole. I really think of schools as kind of like the engine of democracy. It's where we get our future doctors and lawyers and politicians and plumbers. And I wanted to make sure that all of these children had access to the experiences and the education that they would need to live the lives that they wanted to live in the future. And secondly, I had, you know, like them, I had done my stint on the PTA, and I had gotten involved with working on some of the referendum committees back in 2013, I believe. And after that referendum in the 2015 referendum, I joined CFAC, which is the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee. It's the committee that looks at the finances of the school district in much more depth than any other committee. You know, it really looks at how we budget, where our money is coming in, what our expenses look like. And so I realized while sitting on that committee that one of the challenges that we had was that we weren't able to maintain our fund balance. We have this target fund balance of between 5 and 9%. We weren't able to maintain that. And what that did is it made it hard for us to really focus on our future strategies, because we were always just trying to make sure that we could get done what we were getting done. And so, you know, one of the things that I was really focused on when I ran was that I wanted to bring some fiscal stability to our district so that we weren't every 2 years hoping that the legislature would do the right thing, that we had some control over our destiny and that we were able to make decisions from a position of strength, as opposed to always being kind of behind the 8 ball. And then as for lessons learned, this also will sound a lot like Tracy and Carlo. You know, I think for me, one of the biggest challenges I've had is, you know, every decision it seems that we make, you've got a lot of people who are in favor of the decision and a lot of people who are opposed to the decision. And it's, you know, kind of no matter what the decision is. And so for me, being aware that I always need to center the children, all, you know, almost 19,000 of them, and do what's best for them is what makes ultimately for the best decision. It's not important for me to be right. It's important for me to do right.
Thanks, Simi. So let's move on to the scope of the role. You know, what is the role of the school board member as opposed to, for example, the superintendent or the district administration? And maybe in the area of like budget decisions, who makes those decisions? And why don't we, again, let's start with Tracy at this point.
All right. So the school board is governance. So we make the policies that the superintendent and administration and everyone else needs to follow to make the school district run. We are also charged with community engagement and of course hiring superintendents, which I don't know how many I've hired, but a lot. And then of course the kind of the vision and that strategic plan for the district, where the superintendent and administration, they need to act. They need to do the management piece. They need to basically run the school district day to day. So, you know, clearly we can't do it. That's not our role. We're not there, you know, as often as they are every single day. So they're the ones who need to make those decisions. As far as budgets go, we have a role in it. So technically what I've learned is it really isn't our decision. It should be a management decision. However, there are some statutes that kind of pull us into those decisions, specifically, you know, curriculum, we need to approve that, even though we technically don't really make those, the decision, right? We understand why it's being recommended and things of that nature, but we don't literally make that decision. We don't go through the process of it. And I know for our school district in particular, we do make sure that we involve the stakeholders. So we involve our system leaders and they tell us, you know, they make suggestions for budget cuts, which is normally where we are. And then ultimately, you know, the administration needs to take a look at what has been suggested, what can be done, what can't be done, you know, is it a longer time frame because it's a negotiable item or something of that nature? What can we really save by it? So they kind of put that entire package together and then present it to the board, and then we discuss it. You know, what do we want to do, right? What clearly, as Simi had mentioned, we have a fund balance policy, so we want to make sure we're good with our money and keep that fund balance. Because we're a huge district, right? I mean, we are the 6th largest district in the state. So we spend, and I wish I could remember how much a week. It's a lot. It's like $1 million a week or something. So, you know, clearly we need money in reserve just in case. And that has served us well in the past when the legislature actually took away part of our funding. So we didn't have to do short-term borrowing. That's a long story, but ultimately budget is really a group effort, like I said, with our district, putting in ideas and then vetting out ideas and then presenting it to the board, and then we discuss and decide. You know, I mean, unfortunately, when you're cutting, right, you can't avoid affecting students. Everything we do is for the students. So we try to make the best decision we can with the information we have at the time, and hopefully, you know, keeping the classroom and the students foremost, but we, you know, if we have to make cuts, we try to keep it as far from the classroom as we can. Long-winded.
No, very, very good information. And Simi, what would you add to that as far as the role of the board member versus administration and like on issues like the budget decisions? How do you make those decisions?
Sure. So one analogy that I've used when I've talked to people in the community is that, you know, if you imagine that we're 3M or any other publicly traded company, you know, our superintendent is the CEO, right? Our superintendent is the one who kind of helms the ship and, you know, charts the course. We are the board of directors, right? So we are the ones that set the strategy, that set the focus. We're the ones that say, okay, this is what we want to accomplish, X, Y, Z goals. The superintendent is the one who figures out how we get from us saying we want these goals accomplished to the goals being accomplished, right? And so, you know, I think one of the things that's challenging for a lot of people to understand, and it certainly was challenging for me before I got on the board, was how not management oriented we are as a board. And that's a school board thing. That's not just a South Washington County School Board thing. That's an every school board thing, that we are really focused on strategy, on policy, on governance, on what needs to happen, and the how it happens is really, those are management decisions, and those are up to the superintendent and the people that she hires as part of that. So that's one thing I think maybe a more helpful way for people to think about it if they're familiar with how, you know, a publicly traded company operates. And then in terms of the budget, you know, I think one of the you know, when I joined the board, we weren't expecting a pandemic, and I don't think we were expecting, we weren't expecting to have to make budget cuts, at least. And maybe Tracy can speak to if I'm wrong about that. But I mean, I think we thought we would be kind of at a steady state. And so every time you cut the budget, I mean, we're at a point now where you can't cut, you know, $10,000 here, $10,000 there. It's really, you're making very material cuts every time you look at it. And so it's really important to have the buy-in of the experts, the educational experts, who can say, this is what, these are the kinds of cuts that will align with the strategies that the board has set. And so when we talk about, as a board, about, you know, one of the things we mentioned is, you know, we want to accomplish X task. Well, there are some cuts that will affect that more than others. And so that's, you know, kind of how we can make sure that we're staying true to what our role is. But, you know, the stakeholders are, I mean, I think, you know, as Tracy said, it was a really broad group of people who had input into this. You know, we're the ultimate, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down, but I mean, there were dozens upon dozens of people involved in the process.
Carlo, what would you add to that from your experience? And thank you
Well,
for unmuting yourself. Thank you.
Well, from my experience, I went on in 1985, and we were a spoiled group of people, you know, because, and then when you go on the board, it's not just your board, it's the other boards across the state, you know, so you go on as this is the class of 1985. And we really we had money, and we really didn't have to deal with cuts. And I don't believe that we even discussed cuts until maybe 1990. And I mean, it was one of those things where we had grants, we could, you know, give out money, and it was, so it's totally different. But one of the things I did experience or did see happen is that a lot of the turmoil that a board has to go through with budgets really comes from the state legislature. And because those are their decisions. And one of the things that I did do as a board member, there used to be a law, and I don't know if it's still there, but if the school district had not come to an agreement with the teachers by January 15th, then the school district lost $25 a student. And so in 1989, the school district or the teachers union proposed a budget that had, or a contract that had 16 items that they had not cost out. We would not know how much those items cost. And so we said, we can't agree to that. And so when we were on TV, the whole business, we ended up losing $300,000 with that decision, but we felt that that was the right decision. And at that particular time, again, to say that it was a different board, we were offering the teachers 6% this year, 6% next year, and 300,000. And we told them that if we lose the 300,000, we're going to subtract it from this agreement, and we'll go from there. And that's what we did. But a lot of and one of the things I got to see in the future is decisions where the state had said that, you're not going to get your money, and, it just puts the school district in a really bad way. And I'm sorry you guys had to suffer that. So.
Carlo, what about referendums? I understand that we're going to have referendum question on increasing funding for the district on the ballot this fall. Can you explain the decision making that goes into the need for a referendum, whether in the past or in the future? What is that decision making part on the board involved with that?
Well, it's been a while since I've done a referendum. The referendums I took part in were the construction of Gray Cloud, Middleton, Bailey, Cottage Grove, Junior High, and Lake. And some of the things that go into, well, no, it doesn't go in there anymore. But it's important that you bring your constituents along, and that they understand what it is that you want and what it is that you're doing. And I'll give you an example. At one time, our kids' computer rooms were in storage rooms. And one of the TV channels was nice enough to come out and show our kids in the storage rooms. And so we had older people who called and said, hey, our kids can't be in the storage room, and I'm voting for this. And so they did. But one of the things too that a lot of people don't understand is that with referendums, and Tracy, you can speak to this, sometimes it's two parts. You might have an operating, and then you have a building, and they're two different things, and people just see them as one, and they're not. And you cannot take money from this and use it for that, and vice versa. So.
Yeah, I think that's what's the ballot this fall as well. I think there's possibly two questions there. So Tracy, from your point of view, like, what is that decision making that goes into a referendum?
Well, mainly we're looking at our finances. So the difficulty in that is that we can only project so far. The state only funds us 2 years at a time. So, the difficulty, everybody says you need to plan more into your future. It's like, well, we don't know what kind of money we're going to get. So that's really difficult. We try, of course, we try. We clearly make projections on what we feel inflation will be, where we are now. As far as the buildings go, we do facility studies to see, how much is our district growing? How many students do we expect? What do we have right now for space? What are we going to need, based on the projections? And then of course we need the lead time, right? Because you can't build a school, overnight. Obviously, we need a lot of lead time, some as much as like 18 months to 2 years. So we need to plan, but clearly we don't have perfect information. So we need to make projections. So that's what we look at. We look at how much are we spending now? How much are we getting now? What do we project? And, the reality is if we see that we're going to need more money in the future because our fund balance is going down, we have to ask for more money. So I guess that's, and then, like I said, if we need space, we need to ask for a new building. So.
Simi, what would you add to that on the referendum issue
Sure.
and decision making?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One is that over the years, the amount of money that we have gotten, you know, our funding used to be much more state heavy, and it has gotten to be a lot more local heavy over the past, what, like 2 decades or something like that. And secondly, school boards, unlike every other governmental body, we can't raise our own taxes. So whenever we want more money or we need more money, or, you know, we have to go out to the taxpayers and ask them for this. And so I'm sure to the taxpayer, it's, you know, okay, well, in 2013, there was a referendum, and in 2015, and in 2017, you know, and in 2021. But, you know, it's part of how school boards are, like the structure of how we are allowed to govern, is that we are not allowed to be like the city or the county or the state and say, this is what our tax rate is going to be. And then the elected representatives, you know, vote on whether or not, you know, how to raise more revenue to cover the increased expenses. And so one of the things that, you know, the referendum allows us to do is it stabilizes funding. So, you know, when people hear on the news, the legislature allocated 2%, a 2% increase in the education formula. For South Washington County, that only covers that 2%, about 70% of our budget. So if you work for South Washington County and you want, you know, you hear 2%, or you're a community member and you hear 2%, you think, oh, of course our staff can get a 2% raise, but it's really only 2% on 70% of what we bring in. And so the referendum and growth in our district is really key to helping stabilize that funding and allowing us to, you know, maintain contracts with our different bargaining units and pay teachers and paras and bus drivers and nutrition services and all the people who make our school district work and care for our children and educate our children. You know, that's what helps give us more stability and more predictability in what our funding looks like.
You know, another question I think people have, and maybe Carlo, we could start with you on that. Who makes the decision about curriculum? I think a lot of people want to know about that.
Okay, well, there's a curriculum director, and I believe that this person coordinates, and with some of the curriculum, well, okay, I'll say it's curriculum director with the superintendent, with running it by the board voting for it. So that's what I saw.
Tracy or Simi, want to add to that about curriculum decision making? Or it's pretty cut and dry who makes that decision? No.
Well, I mean, the state mandates our standards.
Yes,
You know, I mean, that's part of it. They mandate standards and they mandate the benchmarks, and then we have to, you know, our teaching and learning will then take that information and apply it to the curriculum. But yeah, we have a department that does that.
Right.
What about, oh, go ahead, Carlo.
Okay, I should let you know that at one time when I was on the board, I was the chair of the committee for graduation standards, and it is the state that determines. You can go on the state site and you can see what it is that's supposed to be taught. Now, you know, there is some freedom about what's to be done, but you know, but the state determines that. And I've been really surprised when I see other states where it's like a snap thing, you know, where we're doing this and it's like, my God, the state of Minnesota takes 2 or 3 years when they're deciding the graduation standards. It's not just something that you just do and it's done. So.
What about decisions on school safety protocols, like for COVID-19, such as wearing masks? How are those decisions made? Tracy, why don't you start with that?
So we have a committee And we work with Minnesota Department of Health and our county as well. So we don't meet anymore. We used to meet weekly to find out, what was happening with the numbers and things of that nature. So, I mean, we work together obviously with the Minnesota Department of Health and look at other sites like CDC. And I know Julie has also mentioned the AAP, which is like Association of Pediatric, I don't know, it's AAP. Anyway, we look at the science of what we should be doing to protect our kids. And this is obviously a super hot topic right now, but I think Carlo said it so amazingly well in her op-ed. And thank you so much, Carlo, for writing that. But it's like literally, as we've mentioned, and Simi's mentioned it as well, we need to make the best decision we can for all of our kids. Doesn't mean we're not listening to the families that are for or against, but we ultimately need to make the decision that protects our students. I mean, with what the information we have right now. So anyway, we use a variety of resources, but ultimately it is Superintendent Nielsen's decision. But like I said, she isn't making it in a vacuum. She definitely does her due diligence with information from, like I said, the different organizations that would help with that decision.
Carlo, for those that may not have read your opinion that you had in the newspaper, so maybe you could share that with those joining us tonight about what is that you expressed about this. Oh, you need to unmute you.
I belong to that neighborhood group, Royal Oaks, but it's really, really big. And so they were discussing, they wanted to do a survey of mask versus no mask. And so I wanted to share with them what it's like to be a school board member and what it's like to be responsible. At that time, I think we only had 10,000 kids. And where you're responsible, I mean, you are, I don't remember the Latin term, but you are the parent. As a school board member, you are the parent of 10,000 children, 19,000 children now. And I shared with them that I experienced the death of 3 students, and it's something that you never get over. And in 2 instances, the school district was responsible. I mean, it was because of practices and policies or not enforcing practices and policies that one little boy was run over by a school bus. And in another instance where the administration didn't follow through, one little boy drowned at Lake Elmo. And so preserve. And so you have that happen. You realize you are responsible for all the children, not just yours, not just your neighbors, not just your friends. You are responsible for all the children in the district. So you have to make the best decisions for them possible.
Simi, is there anything you'd want to add to that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think both Tracy and Carlo articulated well the reasons behind this. One of the things that I did want to say to Tracy's point, so we voted as a board about masking, and we heard a lot of parental input, and we synthesized a lot of information. I can tell, every parent who sent me a link, I followed the link, I watched the videos, I read the studies they sent me. I Googled the people to see what kind of credentials or expertise they had, so I knew kind of what I was being sent and how to analyze the information. But one of the other things that Tracy mentioned quickly is that we empowered our superintendent with the ability to make changes in our mask mandate as needed. And one of the reasons for that is that as we get more data, as we see, our cases in Minnesota they were up, now they're kind of plateauing. They may decline, they may go back up, who knows? But when you have that data, or if there is an outbreak in the schools, in the high schools where we didn't vote to have masks, you want to be able to stop that quickly. You don't want to continue to expose kids to risk. And so one of the reasons we mentioned in our vote that the superintendent would be empowered to make the decision is so that if she gets a call on Tuesday that says, okay, we have this massive outbreak at this one specific school, on Wednesday, she can make the change and she doesn't have to wait for us to meet, have a 3-day notice period and all that other kind of stuff that is good governance from a, for regular purposes, but bad governance when you need to make decisions quickly.
You all three had talked about before you got on the school board that you were involved in various activities with the parent-teacher organizations and that. So how can parents or community members get involved with advocating for issues that they are concerned about? For example, classroom size, boundaries, transportation, busing, programs like music or language in elementary schools. Tracy, why don't we start with you on that then? How can parents or community members get involved?
Lots and lots of opportunities, obviously, in the schools. We have district committees if they're interested in that. I know Simi had mentioned one really good advocacy avenue is also legislature, because class size ultimately also comes down to money. And so that is a good place to start as far as that goes. I know you used to be on the Transportation Hazardous Committee for transportation. So, honestly, I would definitely get involved in committees if they have the time or if they have the desire to do such a thing. Because I know you guys were talking about like languages and things of that nature, but we have a curriculum advisory committee. Boundaries, a lot of the time we have committees when we're trying to decide that. So we have task force members, so we have opportunities there. So I would just say get involved if you can. Otherwise, talk to your superintendent, or sorry, talk to your principal, and then kind of see maybe what they would suggest from there as far as, whatever their concern is. Then they can, either find an assistant superintendent or a director or somebody that they can talk with to either get involved or express their concerns.
How is the school board involved in these decisions, or is this really a district administration on things that people might have concern about? Simi.
Sorry, well, I just wanted to add one thing to what Tracy said, which is that
Sure.
district committees in particular are a great way to kind of get much more in-depth knowledge and understanding of what's happening in our school district. I knew kind of on a surface level that education finance was a challenging topic, but I didn't really understand until I sat on CFAC and really understood, okay, this is what this money can be used for. This is how we have to use this money. This is what this money can go for. This is, we can levy to build classrooms, but we can't build bathrooms. So, if you're talking about an overcrowded school that, okay, well, we need 8 classrooms, but there's no place for the children to, go to the bathroom, that's not helpful, right? And so just even understanding some of these things, and there's lots of different committees. There's, an equity committee and curriculum. There's youth advisory committees. So students in our community can get involved and advocate for things that they think are really important and really valuable. And so I think it's a really wonderful way to, everyone who is interested in our schools always wants to know more and do more. And so I think it's a really wonderful way to just get more understanding, be more connected to the community, and just know, even little things like, I have a question about this. Oh, I bet you if I called this person, they can send me in the right direction. And so I really want to make sure that people understand the committees are great. Being involved in your school PTA, if your school has a site council, being involved in that, or volunteering in the classroom. There's so many ways that you can make a real difference in how our schools operate and how to better impact the lives of our kids.
And Carlo, would you add to that then?
Well, one of the things that is interesting to current school board members, one of the easier ways to do it sometimes is just to simply call a school board member or to send an email to a school board member and say, I think this would be a good idea, and most of the time, school board member will know where to send that particular person, or let that person know exactly what the process is and what you need to do. And I want to stress this. I was recently at a meeting, and the individuals seem to feel that the only way that you could speak to a school board was that 5 minutes on TV, and it was like, no, you can call them on the phone, you can email them, you can write them, you can even write the superintendent. These people are people, you can talk to them, so talk to them. So I want to encourage people to do that, and this really is a nice school district. It really is.
Yeah, Carlo's absolutely right. Tracy can tell you, we got a ton of emails about masking. We got a huge amount of emails about how we should go back to school last school year, whether in distance or hybrid or 5 days a week. We've gotten emails about teacher contracts and transportation issues, and you name the issue, someone has sent us an email about it, and it's a great way to get I may not know the answer, but I can forward it to somebody who will know the answer. People have come up to me at Target. People came to me the other week, was the Woodbury Middle School open house, and some mom stopped me in the hallway and said, I need to talk to you about X. And so people, please don't be shy about finding school board members. It's, part of our role, as Tracy said at the outset, is community engagement. And, the easiest way for us to engage the community, or an efficient way for us to engage the community, is when the community has an issue that they come speak with us.
With the league having the candidate forum coming up here with the current candidates running for school board on September 20th. So what would you say on evaluating the candidates for the fall election? What else would help our voters be prepared to vote in the fall election? Or how would you evaluate the candidates running? Tracy?
Personally, I guess, just an understanding that they represent the whole. So the difficult part sometimes, I think, is, we can't advocate for our household, even though, like I said, that's our job as parents. But as a school board member, we truly need to take into consideration all of our students. The other piece that, just that they have an understanding that we don't have a constituency, so we don't represent any one group, we represent everybody. I guess it's, that's kind of the theme, right? So just understanding that, hopefully the people running have the passion that we did, right? That they support public education. They want an excellent education for our students. They know it's a big part of the why people move to our communities. And like I said, I know it's just weird and but it's our future, right? These are our kids. Their education means everything to our future. So I guess, personally, when I was looking, and this is just personally, I would look to see that they had either had some interest in the school district prior, or currently had interest in the school district prior. Is that a requirement? No. I will tell you, as a volunteer extraordinaire, which I did everything. I worked in the district, basically, I would say in almost every single department and every single position in the district, that I felt pretty good going in. I know how, everything about this district. Well, when you get into the school board, it's like, oh my goodness, there's a lot more to know. So just keeping in mind that no matter what they say they know, there's a whole lot more to learn. And, I'm sure they're more than willing to learn that. But yeah, it's just a whole different level when you're elected to the board. So.
Along those same lines, we're starting to get some questions, and so we'll go to those. And one is along that same line, is from a PTO president from Minnetonka Public Schools, saying, how can the school board help the broader community understand the equity is not just for the benefit of the marginalized students, but for all the students, which all three of you were just talking about, used to learn how to be productive citizens in a cultural, multicultural city, state, and nation work. I open up to either one or all of you. So who wants to take that question?
I think schools are a microcosm, right? They're part of the community, and you know, every time that there is something new and different, and I saw this, you know, back when I was talking to people when I was running, and I would hear, you know, complaints about, for example, I would hear complaints about the math curriculum, and parents would say, well, I don't understand how my kids are doing math, and I don't. The undertone was that the math curriculum was wrong, not that, you know, and you know, and not that, you know, maybe there was some change in how we teach math, you know, since the 30 years that parent had been in school. And I think equity is kind of along those same lines. Anything, especially with education, that is new and different to people is a little bit, you know, change is hard. And it's challenging because everybody has been to school. Everybody knows what school is like. Everybody has their experiences in school. Everybody remembers what school was for them. And so if you are, for example, a student whose name has never been mispronounced, you don't understand why it's a big deal for teachers to take the time to say every student's name correctly, right? I had teachers who, when I was a kid, and Simi, I think, is a pretty easy name to say. I had teachers when I was a kid who would say, well, I'm going to call you this instead, because they could not wrap their heads around how I said my name. And then my children come to school 30 years later, and, you know, their teachers say, okay, you know, let me take the time to make sure I'm saying this correctly. And that's part of what equity is too, is making sure that, you know, it's not just, you know, it's for all students, that, you know, the fundamental respect for you being in the classroom comes from the teacher, it comes from the administration, it comes from the community. And that's really an important way for us to demonstrate to all kids that they're all valuable.
We have another question, wondering, can you please tell how the school, and it just moved on me for a second, so bear with me, how the school boundaries are drawn. Is the school board involved with drawing school boundaries? Carlo?
I would just say yes. Okay. And usually there's a committee or several committees, and usually there's lots of controversy. And in the final analysis, the school board is the one who accepts the recommendation, and those are the boundaries. And may God have mercy on your soul, because lots of times you are going to make a large group of people very angry. But there are times when, well, that's what happened with me. That's how I got on the school board. They closed my son's junior high school because there were only 975 junior high and high school students. So it only made sense to do that. But I was angry and I ran for the school board. And so, yes, the school board decides the boundaries.
Yeah, we do. Just a note though, that is actually not one of our, that actually probably shouldn't be our decision, but yes, we do ultimately make those decisions, yes.
Okay. Questions are coming in, so we'll try and get to as many as we can.
You know,
Go ahead,
actually,
Simi.
no, I was going to say something Carlo just said, just reminded me of the question you asked Tracy about what qualities make for a good board member. And I think there are a lot of people who are inspired to run for the board because of a short-term issue, right? And I don't mean to sound dismissive, but the boundaries are, it's a, hopefully, fingers crossed, a once every few years kind of issue. And for, ideally a child isn't going to have to go through that more than once in their career, right? In our schools. And so you get inspired to run, but it turns out that by the time you get through the election and you get on the board, that ship has sailed, right? You can't make those changes because we only act in concert with each other. We can't, it's not legal for me to call up the other members of the board and say, I want to go back and revisit this decision and serially lobby them. We can only talk to each other in public meetings. And so what ends up happening then is you get on the board, the boundary issue is over and done with. So make sure that, whoever you support for the board, make sure that they have the temperament that they're going to be able to make good decisions and exhibit good judgment as whatever issue comes up, right? When I ran for the board, when Tracy ran for the board, I'm 100% sure none of us saw a pandemic coming, right? And I don't think that, that's a reasonable thing for people to have foreseen in 2019 or 1999. But now that we're on the board, I hope that the community thinks that we exhibit the type of judgment that they elected us to the board to have. And so you want to make sure that you have someone who's going to be thoughtful, who's willing to change their mind when new information comes in, who is willing to adapt to new circumstances, who is willing to work together and not just be like let me throw my grenade and walk away. Because these are really important, even our little decisions are important and they have material impact on the lives of our students. And we need to make sure that whoever is in the role of a school board member is really thoughtful and careful about how they make decisions and the process that they use, and that, you may not agree with me for the decisions that I make, but I trust that you think that I have thought about them and that I've exhibited good judgment.
We have a question. Oh, go ahead, Carlo.
Well, one of the things too is that what I got to see with the school board was that you had 7 individuals. That's one of your questions. What do you do with 7 individuals? And one of the things I'm pleased that I got to experience was 7 individuals who would, 1, read their materials, 2, speak with experts, 3, come back and share their information so that when a decision was made, it was probably the best decision that the whole board could make. And so I'm very proud that to have served with people who did that very thing.
Interesting. We just got a question from someone watching on the very same thing. How do you come to a consensus on to bring it to a vote? So also another viewer would like to know, pertinent to funding and the referendum, please speak to how student open enrollment has benefited or hurt your district, or our district, I should say.
So, do you want to talk, Tracy?
I'm good.
Okay, so when students open enroll into the district gets their money. The money travels with the student, right? And then conversely, when students leave our district, the money leaves. We as a district are in a situation where we don't have a lot of our schools aren't available for open enrollment, just because they're already at capacity with students who currently live in the district. So I'm not sure how big, maybe Tracy, you would know how big a real moneymaker, so to speak, this is for us. I don't think that's anything that we use to guide our decision making. I know that there are other school districts that really focus on trying to recruit students from outside the district to come in and go to their schools, and that is not a policy of our school board, and it's not a strategy of our school board. Tracy, did you have more?
No, you know what, I probably knew at one time. I do not know the revenue it does bring into our district, but keeping in mind, it only brings the basic funding formula part. So just, but I do know that, at one point when we had some vacancies, we certainly were thankful that people had faith in our district and open enrolled. But it is definitely not a strategy. It is not something we proactively do, no, because we know we have the growth. So we don't want to, we want to make sure we have room for our students.
We want to tell everybody we're getting toward the top of the hour, and all three panelists have agreed to stay with if we can get a couple more questions and answers in. So we will continue this as we go here. So one of the questions we have is, does the aging population that is residents without children or grandchildren in school make it difficult to get budget resolutions passed? Yes, no, why?
I'm not sure if we would know that. We've certainly had the support of the public, boy, in the recent past, because we've been able to pass our referendum, the referenda that we went out for. We certainly reach out to all of our communities, so when we do have our informational campaigns, we would go to the senior center, or we would go, we do definitely make sure that all of our voters have the information that they need if they desire to come out to vote one way or another. But yeah, we wouldn't really know who's supporting, who's not necessarily, except in, like communities. So if we have, it passes in one community, it doesn't in another, we'll know that overall, but we wouldn't know necessarily the age of the people voting.
Another a current hot topic is how history is being taught in our schools. So how would you advise parents to learn about what the policy or curriculum is in our district, or how to advocate for changes?
So I know that the state right now is looking at social studies standards, and this is something that the state is continuing to discuss. And once the state sets its standards, then our district gets the standards, and then we can figure out how our current curriculum needs to adapt in order to encompass whatever new we have to do or drop what we no longer have to do. So at this point, the best way to advocate is actually to talk to the people at the state who are setting the standards, because we don't have any control over that right now. The state does not talk to school boards about what should be and shouldn't be covered in the standards. They may have a school board member who's part of the committee, but the committee is typically made up of educators or other experts in the field of whatever is being discussed. And the state revisits standards for each curriculum area every few years. I'm not sure exactly what the cadence is, 10 years. And so, this just happens to be when our state history standards are getting re-looked at. And I know that there was a meeting in, I believe it was May, there was a meeting online. So if you want to Google state, the state curriculum committee meeting for social studies from May, you can watch the live cast that they had of it, and they'll have committee members that you can write to. When it comes to our district level, the Teaching and Learning Committee will figure out what needs to happen, and then they'll present that to the board. But from a governance standpoint, the board's real question is, will this help our students meet standards, or will our students meet standards with this curriculum? Will this raise students' test scores, or will this make students more, these are very sort of, we are really concerned with the higher level questions here. And then the actual, we're going to pick this textbook over that textbook, that is done by our district teaching and learning. And I'm sure the curriculum committee has an advisory role there as well. So if they want to get involved there, they can always volunteer for the curriculum committee or contact our district teaching and learning staff that can help, that will take in their input that way.
Someone else would like to know, one of the issues that he or she is concerned about is about teacher compensation, and said that we have wonderful teachers in our district. How do we keep the quality of education that we have here by making sure we invest in our teachers? What do you think?
Well, this is where, so, all right, I am of kind of two minds on this. One, this is exactly when we were talking earlier about the budget and the state legislature and the formula. I mean, this directly impacts teacher compensation. If the state legislature does not give us money, we cannot pay teachers more. And everybody knows that teachers should be paid more than what they're paid now, right? I mean, that's like every teacher worldwide, right? And so, we can't do this in a vacuum. We can't raise, we're capped, even our referendum dollars are capped by the state. We can't raise unlimited referendum dollars. So when the state doesn't raise the referendum cap, and when the state doesn't raise the amount of money that they provide in the K-12 budget, it materially impacts our ability to compensate teachers the way that we would like to, and to compensate our other staff groups too, that also make a difference for our students. And so I would tell parents that they should contact their representatives and their state senators, Carla Bigham, Susan Kent, Tony Jurgens, Keith Franke, Tu Zhang, and Steve Sandell. I have all their email addresses, and I'll be happy to send them to you depending on where you live. And you should contact them, and you should really advocate for this, because they really need to hear from people that this is important to them, and it's important to make sure that it's in the budget. And when it gets into the legislative budget, that gives us the ability to pass money along to teachers.
Tracy, seemed like you wanted to add to that.
Oh, I thought Carlo was gonna say something.
I just want
sorry.
to add that.
I saw both of you nodding.
I guess I just want to add that a lot of people don't understand that school district, when it comes to budget, school districts really don't have that kind of freedom, and that a lot of it is the state legislature. And those are the people you definitely need to speak to, including the governor. And so, because I can remember when the cuts came, the state decided, well, they're not going to give the money to this, so now the school district's in a hurt, and now they have to make cuts, and everybody's angry with them, but they shouldn't be. But they need to understand the money decisions are really made by the legislature.
So
They
for
said it
final,
well.
go ahead, Tracy.
No, they said it well. Don't need me to reiterate.
So I was going to say, maybe we just take a couple of seconds or a few minutes here just for final comments from each of you, about school board and the role of the school board. Why don't we start with you, Tracy?
Well, I just want to say thank you to Woodbury Cottage Grove League of Women Voters, because clearly we've never done this before. And I think it's an awesome opportunity for everyone to learn more about school boards, because I think people think of us as a city council or something, or legislature, and we're not. We're completely different. We just function differently according to the legislation that created us. So I love this forum, and thank you so much. I appreciate it. And it's super fun to see Carlo and Simi on with me. So I don't have much more to say. Just thank you.
Carlo, how about you? Final comments?
Again, I'd like to thank you guys too. And it's great to see you, Tracy. And I want you to know too that, I had a cause or situation, and I contacted the school board, and Tracy was kind enough to contact me, talk about it, and it was wonderful. One of the things I would like for people to understand is that sometimes when it comes to working with the legislature, school boards can be your best allies, because the school boards do have a system with the School Boards Association where they can get laws or suggest us bills, and then work with our Steve Sandell too and the rest of them to get this passed. But so individuals should know that, and they should know that school boards are approachable. They really, really are, and they want to do the best for all the kids in the school district. Thank you again.
No, thank you. And Simi?
Yeah, so to echo Tracy and Carlo, I feel like I've been doing it all night. This was a great opportunity for us to really help share with the community what we do and how we operate. I think it's a little bit of it seems like we have, more say in some things than we actually do, and just being able to demystify a lot of the work that we do, I think will really help people as they go forward and make decisions this fall. And then for me, being on the school board, the absolute best thing is being able to engage with students and being able to be in the schools, to connect with teachers and other staff members. And before the pandemic, the 2 months I was on the board before the pandemic were great because I was able to go out into buildings and talk to staff members, sit in on classes, connect with students. And, the absolute highlight for me of being on the school board was being able to go to 3 graduation ceremonies this year and watch our 3 high schools have, a normal graduation. And that's really why we do what we do, and to always be trying to make these kids' lives better is, and it's an honor and it's a privilege, and it's something that I'm really grateful I'm able to do.
Well, I'm grateful for all 3 of you for your service and being there for our school district. And what an honor to be here tonight to get this information and share this with the community at large. So thank you so much. And I will toss it back now to Betsy. So thank you, everyone.
It's been delightful listening to all of you, and I've learned so much. And it's just when I listen to a reaffirmation of what as Jody has said, what an honor it is to have people like you serving on our board. Think about the years that are represented here that have been given to our community. And as every one of them have said, to the right now 19,000 students that we have. So I want to thank you not only for the League of Women Voters, but for our community, for all of your time, effort, and the passion that you have to make us the best that we can be. Thank you also to Jody tonight to be our moderator, and for people listening that have sent in questions. That's just great. And this is a great beginning for people getting ready to vote. So September 20th will be the 833 candidate forums. September 21st will be the 834, the St. Paul Park City Council candidate forums. And we really hope that you'll attend online. We had hoped to have a live audience, but really with the increase in the rate with COVID, we have decided to take the disappointing stand that we will not have a live audience for our candidate forums, but you can get it on the South Washington County YouTube channel. It will be on there, and we really hope you all will take time to look at it, because it's another way. Again, tonight was a great beginning to be informed about school board. The 20th will be another great opportunity. So looking forward to lots more learning from about our community. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of the evening. Thanks again.